Well, she said that they couldn't, talking about next year's pay award, she said the unions have to engage before they can, and I just thought that's outrageous because they have not engaged in pay talks with us. She acknowledged that Steve Barclay hadn't been prepared to discuss pay at all, and for her to then say, oh, well, the unions aren't engaging, I just think that's outrageous.
I mean, when I spoke to you last year, you were already frustrated and finding it really difficult both at work and at home. You seem to be more frustrated now. Have the last few weeks been more difficult than before?
Well, it's always a very difficult time of year in hospitals, over Christmas and after Christmas, and when it's cold, a lot more people coming into hospital, and it's, short staffing's not gotten any better, and I think all of us working in the NHS having a very hard time at the moment, yeah.
Let's bring in Kat, who's listening in Manchester and was listening to the Minister as well. Kat, I think you work in at A&E, don't you? Give us an idea of what it's like for you. I mean, Jordan's an occupational therapist. What's life in accident and emergency life like at the moment?
It's a battlefield. There isn't any other word that you can use to describe it. You're constantly fighting fires. That's what it feels like. There's not enough nursing staff. There's not enough nurses to care for the patients that are now cared for on a corridor. Like, that is acceptable. And I can't believe, after 20 years of being an NHS nurse, I can't believe how bad things have got now. And, this isn't just over the last couple of months. This has been going on for years because the government are failing to act on the feedback that they're getting and the statistics that they can see that, last year alone in England, 25 nurses left the profession. They're still not recruiting those nurses.
25,000,
the agency bill is through the roof.
Yeah, and, sorry, I was just saying, because, thousands of nurses, as you mentioned, but when I put the point to the Minister today, her response was to say that a 1% pay increase would cost £700 million. How do you respond to that? They say they'd love to pay nurses and other NHS staff more, but there's not the money to go around.
But there is money because there's an emergency bill that funds all of those agency nurses that are plugging the gaps everywhere across the system. And if they, invested in nurses, paid for the training like they did when I qualified 20 years ago, there are ways that they can find the money. They just need to be a bit smarter about how they're using it. And all of the NHS needs investment, all of it does. But at the moment, the nursing pay is a massive issue that they just need to address. And actually, they just need to acknowledge that it is a problem and agree to meet to discuss it, because they're just not even doing that.
Dinah, let's come to you, because you've been trying to get mental health support, the NHS, in Wales, which is obviously controlled by Labour, but you campaign and do work in England as well. So how difficult has that been? Give us an idea of how stretched things are at the moment.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, I can't even begin really to describe the situation of the mental health services at the moment, not just in England, but in Wales as well. I was actually suicidal last year, which is something I try and be as open about as possible because there are many of us going through the same thing. I approached my GP in, I think it was either August or September, with serious suicidal feelings. I'm still on the waiting list to receive any sort of psychiatric care, any sort of counselling. I haven't even been for an initial assessment. But this isn't just now. This has been going on for over 10 years. This is something that's been steadily getting worse and worse and worse. And how bad does it have to get before the government actually listens and decides to do something about it? Because these aren't just statistics, these aren't just figures. People are dying at the other end of these statistics and figures, and something has to be done because it's only going to get worse. You
make your point very powerfully. Let me bring in some of the messages we've had on the 5 phone tonight. Annette saying, I fully support the strikers as an ex-nurse. Louise from the West Midlands, thank you, Louise. I'm in full favour of these strikes. I feel that many of our nurses and emergency workers are not paid enough. There are people on the other side of this debate as well. Julie from Eastbourne, they should get back to work. The wrong question is being asked. The question is, would every taxpayer be happy to pay an additional fee? be so that all the strikers can earn more. John says, in my opinion, nurses are well paid and sure of a job for life. There is a lot of support for nurses and for NHS staff, Jordan, tonight. I just wonder, do you feel there is a resolution somewhere down the line? Is the determination to strike still there from you and your colleagues?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in my hospital, we really wanted to go on strike and didn't quite meet the threshold, but that doesn't mean that people are happy. You know, you've got 96% of the people who voted wanting to go on strike, so all those people wanted to go out on strike as well. And I don't really see how it's going to be resolved until the government actually do something, because, you know, we've got talented young people being burnt out, being worked really hard, and for that person who said we should get back to work, we are working so hard. You know, people are working really, really hard, and it makes me so sad when you hear people in their 20s being burnt out and wanting to leave the NHS.
Jordan, I wish we had more time. Thank you so much for coming in. And Kat and Dinah, great to hear from you both as well. Thank you for your testimony. Good to hear from you all.